Alright fellas, now Gervonta Davis has once again found himself in some heat. After his draw to Lamont Roach, there has been relative silence out of his camp, and today, instead of a fight announcement, we were met with a mugshot. Now, this isn't the first time that Gervonta Davis has been in trouble, but this time it comes at a pretty tough time. He's coming off a draw, he needs to redeem himself, and with some of the biggest money fights slipping away from him now, this certainly won't help. So we need to talk about what he's just been arrested for and what truly this means for his future. But just quickly, if you don't know, my name's Closetown. I make boxing videos to help keep you informed, so make sure to subscribe and I'll always keep you in the loop. But as I just said before, Gervonta Davis is no stranger to trouble. And this story, which is broken today, isn't too different compared to some of the other trouble he's found himself in the past. He was arrested on Friday morning on a domestic violence charge. The alleged incident happened last month on Father's Day, where he allegedly assaulted his ex-girlfriend and the mother of two of his children outside of their home. To quote an article by ESPN directly, according to the report, Davis's ex-girlfriend told police she was involved with a verbal dispute with the boxer over personal matters and Gervonta having insecurity about the sexuality of their son. Davis arrived at a residence to pick up the children where the situation escalated. After putting both children in Davis's car, she alleged that Davis punched her on the rear of her head with a closed fist and then slapped her in the face. She was able to regain custody of her children, which upset Davis further, and then he seemingly left the scene. And that's about everything important to note in terms of the details. It is important to note that this is all alleged, and as I'm recording this, Tank has just gotten bonded out of jail, although the details of his bond have yet to come out. At this point, it seems like every couple years Tank has some sort of similar run-in with the law. His last major run-in came in December of 2022, where he was arrested for allegedly striking a woman with a closed hand type slap, although these charges were later dropped. But I'm not an expert on any of this, and I'm not really here to discuss details of a DV case. I'll let the courts do that. The question I think I can better speculate on is how this will impact his career. Now, his legal troubles in the past haven't done much to slow him down, so will this time be any different? To answer it in a single word, maybe. Now, Gervonta Davis is undeniably one of the biggest names in the sport, and because of the money he generates when he fights, really no matter what he does, it's hard for him not to find opportunities. This no consequence reality is a fight sport thing. Unlike more mainstream sports like football or basketball, usually there's little to no consequences for outside personal actions within fight sports. And honestly, the boxing world has a very short memory. Very rarely do controversies really stick with fighters. From racism to DV cases, unfortunately nobody high up seems to really care, and nothing really ever happens. But this case couldn't come at a worse time for Tank. Of course, he's chasing that rematch with Lamont Roach, and that big money Netflix fight with Paul. And this case could potentially cancel both of these fights. For the Roach rematch, it's just kind of being assumed that this fight is happening in mid-August. Everyone has seemed to acknowledge that it's happening, yet there's been no official announcement. Why has there been no official announcement? Well, maybe they were/are waiting to see what happens with the case. They have known that this was gonna probably come out for the last month, so maybe they were either bracing for impact or hoping it could be all sorted out. But we're now about a month out from the proposed rematch, and time is running out. Every day that goes by, it looks less and less likely, and the news today certainly won't instill any hope. Even if the rematch does happen, the conditions are about as bad as they can get for Tank. In what might be the highest pressure fight of his career, he won't have a complete camp and would have legal proceedings hanging over his head. Combine this with the fact that he seemed a bit rattled and emotional after the draw, it's either a combination for a great performance or a combination for an absolute train crash. And Tank especially needed this rematch to be able to get that Jake-Paul fight. The Jake fight was seemingly signed and sealed, and all he had to do was beat Roach. And after he didn't, it was pushed back until he could, with Jake in the meanwhile opting for Chavez. But Paul versus Tank is a fight that doesn't make too much sense on paper, but when you break down the circumstances around it, it kinda does make more sense. It would be another fight like Mayweather versus Logan. It's the biggest money fight and the biggest eye-drawing fight Tank can currently get. And for him, even with the size difference, he would probably see it as a pretty easy night's work. And with all this, before the news broke today, there was a rumour in about the last week going around that they might be potentially skipping the Roach rematch and going straight to Paul. I wouldn't be surprised if that's still somewhat in the plans. But what will be pretty interesting as a consequence of all of today's news is, will this impact the potential deal with Netflix? Now, as said before, most higher up promoters and organizations don't really care what boxers do. As long as they make money, they're happy. Although, with Netflix, they might care. They probably don't want a bloke who's facing active DV charges to be the face of one of Netflix's main attractions. And this is where I loop back around to, will these charges have an impact on his future? And saying maybe, because I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix backs out of this deal due to worries about public perception. A Paul Tank fight would bring in a much larger casual audience than, say, a Tank Shakur, and with that comes even more mainstream vocal critics. So it will be interesting to see what happens next. But I think a common theme with Tank's career has just been bad timing. I think the Tank camp is more than willing to make the Paul fight happen now within his prime, because really there isn't any super big money fights out there for him. There's no real equivalent opportunities at the lightweight division for super fight level pay. All the boxers which we want to see Tank fight have moved up to 140 or 147, and Tank's not going to chase him down. And the ones at lightweight left are either no names, upcoming prospects, or Shakur Stevenson. The only vague money fight left is Shakur, and even then, for how difficult that fight is, from Tank's perspective, it's probably not worth the money that's on the table currently. And even then, to make that fight happen, he would have to collaborate with the Saudis, which at the moment, he doesn't seem keen to do. So with all this in consideration, the Paul fight really seems like his only option for a mega super payday. But I'm sure over the coming days, we'll probably get a clearer outlook of what's truly happening with the case and what could be next for him. Will the rumoured Roach fight be cancelled? What are the conditions of his bail? Will we see him fight? I guess only time will tell. But now, as always, I want to hear your thoughts on the situation down below. What did you think about the news that broke today, and what do you see being next for Tank? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. If you did enjoy, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really does a ton to help the channel. Yet, thanks for watching, fellas, and I'll catch you in the next one.